Hello everyone, I'm Becky Johnson with Sweetheart Quilt Design Company, and today we're going to talk about how to put a sleeve, a hanging sleeve, on the back of your quilt. I made up this one because I needed one without a hanger on it, a sleeve on it, and this is my pattern. It's called it's called Panel Fun, and it's really easy to make. It's a lot of fun to make. And I'll show you this is the quilt on the front cover of the pattern. And I've put a sleeve on this one already. And this sleeve matches the back, which if you have extra fabric, that's a great way to do it. But I wanted to show you a little bit of what you want the sleeve to do. And the one I'm going to put on that one contrast so you'll be able to see it better. But the first thing I did was cut this and hem the ends. And now if you look at this on the end, you can see that this has been folded. And there's a piece here that lays flat. And then this one has a little bit of give. And the reason for that is so that you can put your rod in and the quilt will still lay flat on the front. If you don't have that, then the quilt kind of curls around your rod. So I'm going to show you how to do that very easily. And I just had to show you this one. This one's on the back cover. And this panel is just perfect for us quilters. This is a great one for hanging in your sewing room. Okay, so I've gone ahead and pre-cut 8.5 inches of fabric here. And one width of the fabric wasn't big enough for the back, so I had to cut 2 and put a seam in it. So we're going to, so you can see, this is one of the reasons I love this 8.5 inch wide ruler, because it's so easy to cut that. Just lay your fabric and you can cut 8.5 inches without having to stack rulers or anything like that. So we're going to straighten one end here. And then I'm going to lay out my quilt. And I'm going to lay this here so that I know how long to cut this. So I'm just going to cut it at the edge of the quilt. So I'm going to line up straight up here and cut that off. Okay, so now we have our sleeve. And the first thing we need to do is hem the ends of it so that they're finished. So you can just take that to your sewing machine and roll it over twice, or it's an easy thing to do is to lay this out. I just fold it back a 1/2 inch and go ahead and press it. And then we're going to press it one more time. So I just rolled it twice. And when you put I already pressed this yesterday, so I knew my seam was laying flat. And just pressing it to one side is a good idea, because sometimes when you're putting your rod in it, it gets stuck on the seam. So that way, if it's pressed to one side, it'll only stick going one way. So you can put the rod in from the other side. Okay. There we go. So I'm just going to sew these down. And I'll just stitch right along the edge of my fold. Okay, now we're going to take this and fold it in half lengthwise so that we can get a nice crease in the bottom here, because that's going to help us when we pin it so that we have that extra fabric on the outside of the sleeve for your rod. So pretty easy to do. Just keep the edges even, and there we go. All right. Now, I just want to double check and make sure you get this on the top of your quilt. It'd be sad to put the whole thing together and have it upside down. Okay, so I'm going to set this on here, and then I'm going to pin it. And I'm looking at it here just to make sure it's the same distance from either end. So I'm going to put a few pins in it. Like that. Just every 6 inches or so. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and sew this. And up here, basically with the scant 1/4 inch, just like when you quilt, because when we sew our binding on, we want the binding to cover up the stitching. So the thread color on this doesn't matter because it's not going to show. I mean, you might not want to use hot pink, but and you probably find it easier to put this on with a walking foot. I have a built-in walking foot on my machine. But you are working, it's like putting on your binding you're working with, except it's even thicker. So you've got the quilt top, the batting, the backing, and then 2 layers. So I guess it's the same as your batting, or your binding. All those B words in quilting. And I stitched just a little bit past the ends just to secure it a little bit more. And now, once that's on like that, you can just go ahead and put your binding on just like you normally do. And when you, you'll be stitching the binding on, which will give it a second stitching and make that extra strong. And then you'll cover up your stitching. So you can see we're way up here where it doesn't show on the, it's not going to show on the front either. You'll be covering it up with your binding. Now, on the bottom of this, you remember I showed you that you had that little extra on the front of the sleeve. So what we're going to do is take this and just fold it back, have it laying flat, but fold it back so you can, that fold's a little hard to see, but the fold's about 1/4 of an inch above where we're going to pin it. And you're going to take these pins out, so if they go clear through to the front, that doesn't matter because you'll be taking them back out as you stitch it. And then you want to go ahead and pin this all the way across, just making sure, there we go, making sure that your sleeve is laying flat and you're just up approximately 1/4 of an inch. And I won't make you watch me pin the whole thing. So then you want to stitch that down, and you are going to have to hand stitch this. If you machine stitched it, your stitching would go right through to the front of your quilt. So you do have to hand stitch it. And let me get some thread here. Now the thread is actually directional. So you do want to use it from the way that it comes off the spool because it will tangle less. Now I like to use the fresh cut end to put it through the needle, so I just pull it through and not this end. And when you're threading a needle, you don't want to really thread the needle. What's much easier to do is you just pinch that thread and then you just needle the thread so it comes through real easily. Did you catch that? Should I demo it again? Okay. And then I pull it all the way through and put a knot in the other end so that I'm working with my thread the same direction as it came off the spool of thread. And believe it or not, it tangles less that way. So give it a try. And I'm just going to come through underneath here so I can hide the tail, making sure that I don't go through to the front of my quilt. And then I'm going to take a couple of stitches, and these stitches will be covered up once that 1/4 inch goes down. And then I just like to go through the back, making really sure that I don't go through to the front. And then you can just go down and just kind of blind stitch it or stitch it like you do your binding. And so you just go along, and that gives you your sleeve so that it'll go, you'll have that extra there. Okay, so you just need to pin it and stitch it the rest of the way across, and then put your binding on just like normal. So thanks a bunch, and we'll see you next time. Oh, be sure and like and subscribe. The like button's down below the video. Thank you. We realized that it was a little hard to see the threading of the needle because the thread was so dark, the thread was so light and blended with my skin. So we're going to go ahead and show it to you one more time with the dark thread. So rather than threading the needle like this, what I like to do is needle the thread. So I get the thread so it's just sticking out a little bit, and then I take the needle and just go down on top of it. And if you're having trouble with it, then the eye of the needle is also directional because they have to poke that hole from one side or the other. Did I get it? Yep. So I turned my needle over and it went on real easily. So that's how you do it. And then just pull it all the way through and tie the knot so that you get your thread going the correct direction.